It's Friday, August 6th, and this is now on HNN.
We are trying to be very focused.
With COVID cases surging, many are wondering if restrictions will be reinstated.
At this point right now, I have no intention of imposing further restrictions, but we're watching this very carefully.
We've got new reaction today after Governor Ige announced vaccine rules for state and county workers.
There are some logistics we wish that the governor had discussed with us.
Plus, new today, the verdict is in for some of the kupuna arrested during the TMT protests on Mauna Kea.
And what is happening is horrendous and unjust. And we have a history as Native Hawaiians of historical trauma. And this is yet another reiteration.
These stories, plus Oahu's median home price hits the million mark. Details coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon, thanks for watching. This is Now on this Friday. Yet again, another high case count day being reported from the State Department of Health.
The state is reporting 628 new COVID infections today, along with 2 more deaths. The breakdown by island shows 110 cases on the Big Island, 9 on Kauai, 64 on Maui. Oahu has 424 cases, and 21 people were diagnosed out of state.
So the governor has made it clear that he won't support another shutdown or stay-at-home order, but he does say he has some changes in mind. So with more on how the city and state are responding to this recent surge, we talked to Honolulu Mayor Rick Blangiardi this morning on Sunrise. I want to play out a portion of that interview.
Right now, we have no intention of imposing further restrictions because to add to the numbers, as of yesterday, and I think these are round numbers, about 960,000 of our residents, 960,000 are either fully vaccinated or have initiated 1 shot. When you add out or back out the 211,000 children under the age of 12 who are not eligible to be vaccinated, that leaves us a target group of about 250,000 people. So clearly, in a sound public policy, this is about having a critical mass of nearly 1 million people fully vaccinated and soon to be. So, we want to keep pushing on those numbers, but at this point right now, and I want to clear up one other thing. At this point right now, I have no intention of imposing further restrictions, but we're watching this very carefully. We're in a place that we didn't anticipate we would be in. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were thinking, here we are moving towards no restrictions whatsoever. And Dr. Char talked about that and talked about the much publicized 70% threshold and said yesterday that more than likely under these circumstances, given the aggressive, infectious nature of this Delta variant, that we're going to probably have to raise that. So right now it's about responding to the greater good, which is the majority of people, and not imposing restrictions. We're not so sure. We're targeted on getting those people that are not vaccinated.
So does that include gatherings? Because we're hearing that those numbers will be reduced.
Well, that was not correctly reported. Okay. I read that story last night. The governor, in my conversations with him on Wednesday, had suggested the one area, because we talked to him about restrictions that they were concerned about, was because of the belief of the doctors that some of this is coming, communal spread is through these large gatherings, is that we might reduce the size of gatherings. That conversation is going to take place later this morning. I did not say that, as a matter of fact, that we would reduce the gatherings from 25 down to 25 outdoors again and 10, even though it was reported that way.
So the governor's mandate that all state and county workers be vaccinated or pay out of pocket for COVID testing is being met with a lot of questions. The resounding response from unions yesterday was that the Ige administration announced the mandate without asking for their input or even involving them in the conversation. They raise legal concerns and wonder quite simply, how will all this be implemented? If they can't get their shots by August 16th, the state and county employees will need to start getting weekly COVID tests. And if they can't find a free provider, the governor wants them to pay for it themselves. This goes for all 55,000 state employees and the tens of thousands of county workers. Keep in mind, not complying with this could result in discipline actions or even termination. The new mandate allows for exemptions for religious and medical reasons, but the governor says he leaves enforcement up to the counties. Critics say a standard policy would be less confusing, but the mayors are trying to make it work. Today, Casey Lunn had a chat with the president of HSTA, who detailed how public school teachers are reacting to the governor's decision.
We weren't exactly clear on how HSTA feels about this. Do you oppose a state mandate for public school teachers? If that's so, isn't that ultimately also putting students at risk? Where do you stand on the governor's decision to mandate that for all state employees?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate that teachers had early access to the vaccines, and teachers took up that option. And we found out from the Department of Education that 80% of our teachers got vaccinated. So we're very thankful for that. But there are some in our ranks that have medical or religious reasons why they cannot get the vaccine, or there is still some hesitancy, unfortunately, because the FDA hasn't fully approved it yet. And for those people, they still have rights that we have to work towards defending. And for instance, when are they going to test and things like that. And then there's also the thing about rural schools, rural communities. How do they go and get it? You know, in Oahu, we can just go down to the CVS and get a vaccine, or we can go everywhere to get tested. But in our communities like Ka'u, Kohala, Hana, how do they get it easily? And then they have to travel every week. So there are some logistics we wish that the governor had discussed with us, that we would have worked out with him. We were willing to sit down, willing to talk, and he didn't come to the table. He didn't want to talk with us about it.
Meanwhile, the State House is also requiring vaccines for its members and staff. They'll have until September 30th to get fully vaccinated, and those who don't will have to undergo a weekly test. House Speaker Scott Saiki says state government must take the lead to protect Hawaii's residents, and he says imposing a vaccine requirement upon themselves is the most effective way to make this clear. But House Minority Leader Val Okimoto, who is vaccinated, says the shots should not be forced.
I just feel like it should be a personal choice, especially when it comes to a vaccine that is not fully FDA approved. You know, really, when you think about what a leader does or what leaders should be doing, lead by example. Yes, we lead by example, but we don't mandate it. That's not going to help our society, especially with our local culture here. You want to educate people, have them, ask their questions, whatever fears or concerns they have, let them be resolved. But once you start coming down with a heavy hand, that's not going to be received well. And that's been the case with this.
What do you think is the better approach? Like, what do you think we should do to, curb infection? Because vaccines have been around for a while now. And I feel like at this point, anyone who wants one already has one, and people are still getting sick. So how can we make sure it's safer out there by not mandating vaccines?
That's a great question. I think it's going to come with time. Definitely. I'm really grateful that we have the technology that has allowed us, to me, it's a medical miracle that we have this vaccine in such a short amount of time. And it really will just be educating people, having them see, the benefits of it. To me, education has always been something that I'm a former teacher. When you educate people, that's how you can really empower them to make the best decisions for themselves. But I've actually spoken with people where they were considering it, but once the mandates came down and there was a sense of shaming also. If you didn't get the vaccine, you're discriminated against or you're kind of bullied. That kind of rhetoric needs to stop, because that's not going to encourage anyone to make this decision. In fact, it has the reverse effect.
Rescue crews found a paddleboarder who went missing in the Oluwalu area yesterday. Maui fire personnel conducted searches on land and sea throughout the night with assistance from the Coast Guard. At approximately 7:40 this morning, they located the individual about a mile offshore in the Ukumehame area. The 51-year-old woman was airlifted out. She's said to be stable but exhausted. We just learned the verdict for a group of kupuna who were arrested while protesting the construction of the 30-meter telescope back in 2019. The 4 defendants were found not guilty for obstructing Mauna Kea access road. The judge said the state failed to meet its burden since the wide load trucks that went up the road did not have permits, so there was no obstruction. The remaining kupuna that were arrested have their verdicts in groups, and attorneys are expected to ask the judge to dismiss those remaining cases. Our Mahealani Richardson talked with one of the defendants, Dr. Marie Alohalani Brown, and her attorney after today's virtual hearing, and she was overcome with emotion.
If you were to ask my fellow kupuna who were arrested for trying to protect Mauna Kea about their motives for protecting the sacred mountain, I am sure that many of them would offer up my reason, namely, as Hawaiians, we are morally obligated to protect that which we consider sacred. Our ancestors did so, and we continue to do so. Historically, laws have not always been ethical or moral. Notable examples include the legalization of slavery in the US and later segregation after slavery was abolished. For example, it is also illegal to desecrate a Christian graveyard, but it is legal to desecrate a mountain, sacred mountain, where ancestral remains are also buried. My religious beliefs and practices are not protected by law. Not only am I a professor of religion, a specialist in ho'omana, also known as Hawaiian religion, the traditional belief system of our islands, but I am also a ho'omana practitioner, and thus my reason for protecting Mauna Kea is informed by my religious beliefs. It's been a long 2 years, and I'm glad that at least for me and Auntie Maxine, Uncle Skippy, and Puna, that the judge declared us not guilty. Thank you.
New today, Oahu residents with driver's licenses, state identification cards, or instruction permits that have originally expired since March 2020 now have an additional 2 months to renew them. We just learned today that they will be valid until October 4th of this year, giving an estimated 128,000 Oahu residents extra time to renew them. Real estate agency Location says the median home price of a single-family home on Oahu hit the $1 million mark in July. Competition in the housing market remains stiff as homes are selling faster, getting more offers, and being sold for far over asking price. Locations also says the cost for a condo on Oahu was about $467,000, which is also a record high. From the infrastructure bill to the insurrection committee to fighting over mask rules, a lot has happened on Capitol Hill this summer. To get a wrap-up and update, we talked to Congressman Ed Case this morning on Sunrise.
I wanted to ask you about eviction moratoriums because the state is supposed to end them today, but it hasn't been clear exactly how this will work, given the CDC requirements that would extend it to October 3rd. What rules are in place right now? What does this basically mean for anyone who's worried about this?
Well, it is confusing right now, and I wish it wasn't confusing, but the way that the federal mandate was extended in conjunction with what's happening at the state level has provided a lot of confusion, and we're trying to sort it out ourselves and make sure that we give folks the most accurate information. What I can say right now is it's correct that the state eviction moratorium does end, but we did, in fact, extend the federal moratorium under certain conditions. We think we've confirmed that all of Hawaii is eligible for the federal moratorium extension until October 2nd. I want to be really clear that that doesn't apply to every renter in every situation. There are clear conditions on the moratorium being extended under the federal CDC directive to people that just really, really need it. So in other words, if you can pay your rent, you should be paying your rent. And if you can't, the moratorium should kick in. And so we're trying to get that information out as fast as possible. But the best thing I can say right now is if you do have questions or are worried about it, you can contact me through case.house.gov, and we'll try to sort it out for you. But that's the bottom line. If you've been subject to the moratorium to date, we think that you will continue to be subject to it. And if you're not, a new state law also kicks in that requires mediation when your landlord wants to evict you.
The infrastructure bill could mean $1.2 billion for Hawaii roads and for our bridges. I wanted to ask you if you had any more detail on what that would mean for our state if it passes.
Well, first of all, the Senate, as we speak, is in session trying very, very hard to pass a bipartisan infrastructure bill at over $1 trillion, the largest reinvestment in our infrastructure in our nation's history. And I'm very supportive of that bipartisan infrastructure bill. President Biden has fought hard for it. A group of senators in both parties have fought for it. I have with my colleagues in Congress, and we're hoping that that comes out of the Senate in just a few days. I haven't gotten into the weeds on what the Senate bill actually says, but the bottom line is it would be hundreds of millions, if not up to $1 billion or so, to Hawaii, fairly discretionary in terms of where that money goes. Now, infrastructure means, the basic infrastructure stuff like, roads and harbors and airports and as you say, bridges, all of which need critical help here in Hawaii. But it's broader than that. It's to help our schools where they need upgrades. Broadband is a critical area throughout our country and in our Hawaii, as we've seen during COVID-19 with needs in telehealth and teleeducation, telework. And so all of this would be part of this infrastructure bill. And I'm hoping that I get it over in the House next week, and we can get it out as soon as possible and to the president to sign. It would be a great accomplishment.
I believe Reuters is reporting that if this infrastructure bill passes, it would add some $250 billion to our deficit. Do you think those costs are justified?
The Congressional Budget Office scores these bills, and that's what they say. And it's not 1 year. It's over a period of years. I think if that is really the case, I'm concerned about adding to our federal deficits and debt. So I would not support some of the other proposals in Congress that propose to add trillions of dollars to our national debt over the short term. I can't support those bills. But if there is a spread out in reinvestment in our systems out there that doesn't really show up in the CBO scoring, I think it's there to be argued that we can sustain that level of additional debt and deficit in return for what it will actually bring to our state and to our country.
How's it on this Friday? The weekend weather's looking good because we are cyclone free in the Central Pacific. In the East Pacific, however, we are tracking 2 cyclones, none of which are expected to bring us any severe weather, but there's a chance that the remnants from Jimena could come into the state and bring us some rain. And if that happens, because it's not a guarantee, but if that happens, we could see a few more showers, maybe Tuesday into Wednesday. Most of Hilda's remains will go well to the north of us, so it will not affect our weather. We're expecting breezy trade winds today and tomorrow. We will see a few wind-related Mauka showers. We're not expecting a lot of rain because whatever rain does come through will be moving along very quickly. That limits the rainfall buildups, right? It's going to be very breezy through Saturday, and the winds leveling off on Saturday and on Sunday into Monday, and we're expecting drier conditions for the last half of the weekend. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
All right, from the feeds, let's see what the internet is abuzz about today. We'll start with this. Yelp has added a new feature that lets businesses list whether they require proof of COVID vaccinations for customers and whether all workers are fully vaccinated. Yelp users can then filter their searches for the businesses. Only businesses themselves can add this function to their Yelp page. Yelp says it will monitor the pages of businesses that decide to use this for any backlash on their vaccine policies.
Taylor Swift posted a cryptic code on a new social media video, and fans are trying to crack it. In the video, there are scrambled words on the screen and a caption reading, quote, "level, casually cruel in the name of being honest." The award-winning singer appears to be hinting at the music and possible collaborations on the long-awaited re-release of her 2012 album, Red. Some fans think the clues indicate Swift will include some never-before-heard songs on the new version of the album. Red is set for re-release in November. And TGIF and happy International Beer Day, everybody. Whether it's a pale ale, pilsner, porter, or stout, grab a cold one, raise a glass, and cheers with some friends today. International Beer Day dates back to 2008, and the holiday always falls on the first Friday in August because it's so hot in many parts of the world.
Yes, great holiday. Real quick, what's your favorite refresher?
I I usually go for a Kona longboard.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say if I'm going for any of those mainland brands, usually I stick to a Coors Light, maybe, just because it's pretty easy. It's not too harsh. Yeah.
My mom drinks Coors Light too.
Yeah, I'll even go for those Michelob Ultras. I need like a light beer. So happy beer day to you.
You too.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You guys, TGIF, have a good one.